All right, so there are surveillance cameras everywhere now. You've probably walked down a street in Montreal, looked up near the lamppost and seen that there are, SPVM cameras. Of course, you go into businesses, you walk through the front door, sometimes they show you the video monitor. Cameras are everywhere. But this instance of surveillance cameras, a lot of people are saying might go too far. The installation of surveillance cameras in the public toilets at Place du Puy has been strongly criticized by many. Of course, there are issues. If you know the Place du Puy area in downtown Montreal, it's an area that has seen some tough times and incidents of drug use and violence, right? So with that in mind, let's find out what the law says about security cameras, surveillance cameras, and where they can go. Valérie Black St-Laurent joins us on the line, human rights lawyer at JuriGO. Valérie, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, first things first, what was your reaction when you see the story that at Place du Puy they've installed cameras in the public toilets in that area? What's the first thing that goes through your mind as a lawyer?
Well, I definitely understand the discomfort that people must feel walking in and seeing that they may be filmed while they're, going to the bathroom. It is quite a private area. Nonetheless, knowing the reality of the Place du Puy, I'm also not entirely surprised knowing that there are significant issues related to drug use, namely in that area.
And what does the law say with the use of surveillance cameras? You're on private property. You're at Place du Puy. Someone owns Place du Puy. You're on private property. But what does the law say about the use of these surveillance cameras and how much the public is allowed to know about their placement?
So the first thing is that everyone has a right to privacy and dignity of their own person. So as soon as we see that there's a camera that's placed, namely in, as I mentioned, an area that would be considered generally to be very private, there is an intrusion on that right. Now, to be able to make this legal, the intrusion must be reasonable and justifiable in the circumstances. And again, this is where it goes into the reality of the location, namely of Place du Puy, and the realities of the crimes that are going on in that area may be able to be reasonable and justifiable in this circumstance.
Does signage matter here? If they are making it very clear as you go through the corridor to the bathroom, as you enter the bathroom, if they are making it clear cameras are there, is that enough?
It helps. The reality is that Place du Puy right. It is privately owned, but it is considered a public area, right, where people go in and out. And so having signage allows people to be able to subtract themselves from that area if they do not wish to be filmed or recorded on camera. So the signage helps in ensuring that the intrusion on someone's right to privacy is not overly invaded by giving them the opportunity to just not go there and not be filmed to begin with.
And for the bathrooms themselves, and maybe you know about how they're being used at Place du Puy, the cameras that are there, right, that only shows the outside of the stall area, right? Because that's the other question. They couldn't possibly be allowed to put anything where you could see inside a stall, correct?
Well, this is what we're looking at, a measure that's being reasonable. It would be hard to justify it being reasonable in the circumstance to film someone in the stall when we're looking at, is this the last measure that was deemed available to them because they've tried everything else, namely by hiring security, for example. How do we get to the point where we're putting a camera in the stall, and is that a reasonable intrusion into someone's privacy would be hard to justify. Now, if we're filming more common areas where people come in and out, and there's also a sign, at this point in the legal analysis, it could be something that is deemed to be reasonable in the circumstances.
We're with Valérie Black St-Laurent, human rights lawyer at JuriGO, and we're talking about the use of surveillance cameras in public places in light of the fact that the toilets at Place du Puy recently had cameras installed there. Valérie, is there any prior law in this province when it comes to these cameras being deemed an invasion of privacy?
Well, there's been, decisions recently with regards to those cameras installed in schools, namely. And this is a little bit of a different circumstances where, again, if we're looking at the possibility or not to subtract themselves from being filmed, students are required to go to school, are required to stay there all day. And obviously then the bathrooms for them are put at that disposition where they are expected to stay there all day. So when we're looking at the different degrees of, is the intrusion reasonable? If there are other measures that could have been taken, we need to look at these different factors as well. So we do have some decisions and guidelines that allow us to analyze the situations based on different set of facts to see, well, is this specific circumstance a situation where we agree that the use is reasonable or is it not?
And how much notice do you have to give the public? And I'm just thinking about businesses. Sometimes you go to a business and they make a big show of it. They're like, smile, you're on camera. And they show you at the front of the store all the different angles and how they have the shop covered. Other places, they have the cameras. They don't tell you about it. It's much more in the background. They don't want you to know they have cameras. Is there any difference in the eyes of the law?
Well, there is, in terms of if we're looking at if the intrusion essentially is one that is reasonable or not. So one of the things that is looked at as well through the courts is, how are those companies maintaining that footage? Is it anyone who can look at it? Is it kept for an indeterminate period of time? Are 10 people looking at this footage? One person? What is it used for? And again, the possibility of someone being informed that they're going to be filmed is going to assist the court in determining if the intrusion and the measures that were put in place are reasonable or unreasonable.
If I was a business owner and I want to make sure that I have the legal backing to move forward, what would be your advice to them? What type of things should a business document in order to make the case that cameras are necessary?
So first of all, it's to show that there is either crime or vandalism or, things that are happening that are disrupting the security of the place and being the normal use of that space, whether that be a mall, a bar, a restaurant, so be it. Second of all, they're going to need to show that they've tried other measures that have failed. So whether it be, having staff go, I'm giving the bathrooms, for example, but go in the bathroom once in a while when they're cleaning, making sure that everything is going normally, hiring security guards if we're talking about a bar, a mall, ensuring that crimes, are not being committed. And if these things continue to fail and the crimes keep occurring, especially in a particular spot, namely the bathroom, we can come to a point where now we need to justify the use of those cameras. Furthermore, if it were to go to court, you need to explain to the court, how are you retaining this footage? Again, is it retained for a week, 2 weeks, just enough to be able to alert the authorities if something happened? Is it kept for an indeterminate amount of time, for example, which would be unjustifiable? How many people are looking at it? And again, what measures have been put in place to inform your patrons that they may be filmed and that footage may be recorded? Valerie,
anything we didn't touch on in our interview so far that we should have got to that you feel we've missed out on?
I think that's it.
We covered all the bases. Okay, great to know. Valerie, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Have a great day. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. That's Valérie Black St-Laurent, human rights lawyer at JuriGO.